Hello my amazing developers. So in the previous video we covered basics how to set up the project for creating camera application. We also looked at how we organize files. We then looked at how to create launch view controller that is responsible for app startup and requesting user permissions. We also saw how to create subviews, and we finally ended up the video where we requested camera permission from the user. In today's video, I'm excited to bring you amazing stuff. We will look at animations, handle error states, organize code for requesting permissions in launch view controller, and then finally we will create view to request microphone permission from the user. So let's get started. So I have Xcode opened up over here. This is the previous project where we were working on become a presenter. So what we are going to do now is add shadow to our action button. For the request camera authorization view, we have an action button over here. So we are going to add shadow over here. We're going to create a function called add action button shadow. Make sure we call it in our custom init method. Action button dot layer shadow radius is 10. We are going to say shadow color black, CG color, shadow opacity is 0.3, masks to bounds is false, shadow offset (5 and 10). Finally, we will set up action button corner radius as well. So let's run our app and see how we have the shadow. Now we have a good shadow below the button. That looks nice. Next, we are going to add animations to our application. As you guys know, iOS application is incomplete without animations. It gives a more appealing look to our users, and animations are really important for the user experience. So let's see how we are going to animate in the views. So I'm in the request camera authorization view, and I'll be creating some functions that will be responsible for animation. I'm going to have two functions. One will be animate in, another will be animate out. So in the animate in, what I want to do is every single view that we have under the request camera authorization. So what I want to do for the animation is every single view for the camera authorization, I should have it hidden by default for all the views, and while they are animating in, I should bring them slightly down. So let's add that code. Let's say alpha is 0. I'm going to use transformation because it is the simplest thing without breaking our constraints. CG affine transform, and I'm going to say translate x is 0, y is -20. Yes, and I'm going to have myself an animation here, UI view property animator. I'm going to use this one. I'm going to say a 0.3, rather 0.2, ease in and out, so our animation starts as smooth and ends also as smooth. Here I'm going to write the animation for the code. Alpha will be 1, so it's visible, and the transformation matrix, I'm going to set it to identity. That means it will remember its original position. And animation, I'm going to say start animation, but here we have two methods for start animation. I'm going to use the one for the delay. I'll show you that in a bit. I'm going to also have a delay method, delay parameter over here with the time interval, and pass in the delay parameter, delay. So let's create a function over here. We should have it as public, so our implementing class can call it. I'm going to just write in the code temporarily now to have all of the views hidden. We have the title label alpha 0, message label dot alpha is 0, action button also alpha is 0, and let's animate in the view by passing in our view for camera image view. Delay is 0. Let's run the app and see how it goes. But before we run that, we need to call this method in the launch view controller after we have set up the code. So request camera authorization view dot animate in views. So let's build and run our app. As you guys saw, it was a quite fast animation. Let's continue adding the animation for the rest of the views as well. Go back to the request camera authorization view, and here instead of only animating camera image view, I'm going to animate all of them. So here in this code, let's create an array and animate all the views along with it. Views to animate, camera image view, title label, message label, as well as an action button. So I'm going to have a variable I and view to animate, views to animate enumerated, and I'm going to call the function for animate in view, and this time the view should be view to animate, and delay is 0.15 multiply with an I. So now if I build the application, it's going to give me an error. That's because it's complaining that I should be typecasted double, and this is an optional variable, so we need to have a view, views to animate, view to animate, view to animate, else continue with the loop, and this view will be here. Let's build it and again see, fine, let's delete this part of the code. Let's run the app one more time and see whether this works or not. Perfect, this is what we wanted. All the views were coming down slowly. I will delay the animation and see how it looks. To see the animations, you can always make this slightly slower, like a bigger value, and see how it goes. 2 to 5 would be a good amount. Now let's see. Make sure we change our delta as well. This is exactly the same effect that we want, but we want it faster, not as this speed. So let's reset our values, 0.15, and this was 0.2. So we are here and we are going to create one more function, animate out views, same way. and animate out view will have the same effect but in an opposite way. So we don't need this, we can directly start with animation. UI view property animator, duration is 0.2, same. Ease in and out, again it's starting smooth and ending smooth as well. View alpha and transformation should be CG affine transform and translation 0 - 20, and also animation start. Animation after delay, we need to have a delay variable as well. Let's bring up some space over here. Delay is the time interval type, pass in the delay here. And same thing we can do for this code. I'm going to copy paste it and change the variable animate out view. So when we are done with the permissions and the user has granted the permission, we will animate out the views the same way they have come in previously. So what this will do is this will create a same kind of effect for the views. So let's test our animate out code. Let's head back to the launch view controller where we have previously written animate in views. Here, just to test, I'm going to have dispatch queue main async after now plus like 5 seconds, and I can have request camera authorization view and end the disclosure and say animate out views. I think the function name is not, I think it was not saved. So here let's try out the code again, animate out views, yes. Let's run the app and to confirm whether animate out views is working or not. Perfect. As you guys saw, it animates out in the same way as it came in. Next, what we need to do is when the user denies the permission for the camera, we need to show the message for that in our view, and we are reusing our view for that purpose, so we need to handle the error state. So let's add that code. Let's head back to request camera authorization view and create a function configure for disabled state. Here we are setting up title label dot text camera authorization denied, and we need to update our button action button also. Set title, we will say open settings for normal state. Now when we run the app, let's call that code and see what I mean exactly. Let's remove this code that we added earlier for animating out and request configure for disabled state. So when I run the app now, you're going to see the action button is not up to the full size of the text of that. So let's fix that. Let's head to the request camera authorization view, and I am going to have an IB outlet for the width constraint of the action button. NS layout constraint, make sure you connect the width constraint also of the action button. So you go to the action button, select its constraint, double click the width constraint, go to the connections inspector, select the connection for the constraint and connect it to the file owner's action button width constraint. That's set up. Let's hide this bar again, go back to the request camera authorization and increase the width this time. Action button width constraint dot constant. Let's give it a value of 120 for testing purpose. Let's see how it goes. Perfect. It's fine. You could give it more. 130, 140 would be fine, but it's fine for the demo. Let's continue. Next, we need to clean up the code and piece a lot of stuff in the launch view controller for the permissions. So let's do that. Let's go open up the launch view controller, and we had written ourselves the code with everything in the setup views. So let's clean this up. Have a proper function name, or rather we can just rename this function. We can choose, hold down the command key, click on the name, choose edit all in scope, and this time write setup request camera authorization view. And similarly, we are going to write remove camera request authorization view from the view controller. So let's write that code, remove request camera authorization view, and we are just going to add a guard statement. Now before we do that, we need to have a variable over here, private var request camera authorization view. It's of type same request camera authorization view, and it's an optional type. Take this variable over here, say self dot request camera authorization view is equal to request camera authorization view. This is because we need to have the same handle over here when we are going to remove it from our views. So first check whether this is not nil, otherwise we are going to return. And before we say remove from super view, we need to call the animate out. So for that, request camera authorization view, call the method animate out views. Now animation, we need to wait until all the views have successfully animated out and then call the function. So for that, we are going to have a completion handler inside the animate out views. So let's add that. Open up the request camera authorization view, and in the animate out, let's have a property as a completion handler, and type is escaping. Now what we need to do is, in the last function of the animate out, we need to have the add completion. So we don't care about its position, we just need to call the completion. But we should call the add completion block before we start the animation. So we are going to have completion handler over here, and I'm going to keep its type as optional. Going to call the animation completion handler in the completion of the animation. It's tricky to say that. So what I need to do now is check whether I'm on the last view controller, whether I'm on the last view that is animated out, and call the completion. So for that, I'm going to set up its type same way as an optional. By default it's nil, so I'm going to only set this value to our completion handler for the last action button. So let's check that. I'm going to say if view to animate is same as our last one, that means we are on the last one, that time we should have completion handler to call, set it to completion handler. So let's confirm this code is running by going to launch view controller, and in the animate out we are going to call with the completion handler and print ourselves a message animation finished. Let's hold on to the remove from super view right now currently. Let's run the app and see whether this code runs. Now we need to call that code. So same way we can test it out currently. Dispatch queue main async after 5 seconds call, but we need to have always, whenever we are writing ourselves closure, we need to handle the self as weak for the iOS not to have memory leak. Let's see whether this runs fine after 5 seconds. Good. That means our completion block was running fine. Now we can call the remove from super view here, and as well as same way we can clear the parameter, the property of the class, sorry. Make sure we set it to nil when the animation finishes. It's complaining about the type. Let's have this variable over here, and same request camera authorization. Let's stop the app, so give us some more space over here. And this time we don't need an optional, we don't need this one also, and this is fine. So we are going to the self and saying the property set this property to nil. Let's run the app now. All right. Next, we are going to create a function that will handle all the states for the permission. So what we want to do is simplify the code for launch view controller's responsibility, that whether we have granted the camera permission and continue for the taking out the camera permission view and requesting microphone permission. So for that we are going to use only one function, and to simplify things, and let's go ahead and create that. So under the private extension, let's have a function setup view for next authorization request. So we are going to call this method in the view.did_load also, and any time when the view is also taken out, we are going to call the same method. Next, let's have a property to request the current authorization from the camera. Let's head to the top and have private var request camera authorization status. We're going to ask our request camera authorization controller that what is the current camera authorization status. And at the same time, we in the did set method of the same property, because it's var, we're going to reuse this property. We need to call setup view for the next authorization request. And this property, let's update it in our below part for the camera permission. So here we have the status. We can get the self as weak. Guard let self equal self, else return self.status. Sorry, camera authorization status is equal to status. So what happens is when the user grants the permission for the camera, this specific property gets updated and it will call then the load the next authorization request. So we can animate out the view and call in the microphone permission view. Next, let's add the code for loading the next request view when the permission is given for the camera. So for that, we are going to update the code under here. We are saying guard camera authorization status is equal granted, else we need to return, and here when the permission is not granted, we will call setup request authorization view again. Next, we need to handle the code over here. Guard request camera authorization view is not equal to nil. Sorry, it should be nil. Return. So let's run the app and see whether this code is running fine now. I'm going to delete the code, application. Okay, camera authorization was denied. That is because we have, okay, let's get rid of that code also. We called in the code configured for disabled state, and we are going to delete this after 5 seconds code. Let's run the app again and see what happens. Alright, so we have the proper state now. Let's click allow and say OK. Alright. So now what we need to do is when the person grants the permission, we should take this view out. Let's go ahead and do that. So what happens is when the user grants the permission, we are updating the status of the camera authorization, and this specific code in the did set calls the setup view for next authorization request. It comes down below to this function, and now the permission has been granted. So we need to check if this view is currently set as a property, then take it out. So let's add that code. Remove camera request authorization view, and I'm going to return from here. So let's see when the permission was granted whether this specific code runs or not. Let's stop the app, delete our application again, run the app again. This time say allow and say OK. Very good. That code runs fine now. Next, what we need to do is this specific code over here. This means the camera permission was granted and this view was taken out. So if we fall through here, that means we can proceed to show microphone permission. So let's print ourselves a message that is going to do the same thing for now. Request microphone authorization. So when we build and run the application, we see it's falling through properly and it's coming down to the print statement. This is perfect. This is what we need. Next, let's handle the state when the user denies the permission for using camera. So in the setup view, that is going to be called when the camera authorization status is updated from the callback method. This specific code setup view is going to be called that time under the did set, and when the permission was not granted, we are going to call setup request camera authorization view. It is going to come down over here in the setup request camera authorization view, and the view is not nil. This time we need to check whether the permission was unauthorized. So let's have an if statement over here, unauthorized, and I'm going to have request camera authorization view dot configure for disabled state. Actually, it just came to my mind, this is not a good name. We should name it something else. Configure for error state. Let's have the same code, the name over here. Yeah, we need to delete the app. Say don't allow. We get the proper error state. So now we need to handle one more thing over here. When we stop the app and run it again, we need to make sure we are in the same error state, because as of iOS, the permission was not granted to the user. We are still in error state. So for that, we will do something over here. Let's stop the app, and under the same function, let's have the variable over here as well before we animate in. If camera authorization status is unauthorized, update the configure for error state. Let's run the app again and see whether this code works. Fine, it works. Now what we need to do is we also need to handle the open settings button. So what happens is the same delegate method gets called, and we don't want this time to request for camera authorization. So let's update that code. We are stopping the application and checking the camera authorization status. If it was not requested, then only request for permission. Let's indent the code. And here, if the camera authorization was unauthorized, we need to open settings. So for open settings, we're going to have another function over here, open settings. Call the open settings over here. UI application, open settings URL string. We need to have settings URL string, and URL type string, settings URL string, and say UI application open URL, UI application dot shared open URL, and this time it should be settings URL, options and empty dictionary, completion handler nil. So let's confirm whether this runs fine or not. Build and run the application. Click on open settings. Voila, it goes there. Now we are done with requesting camera permission. Let's create ourselves the view for requesting microphone permission, and it follows exactly the same process. This is why we had cleaned up the launch view controller beforehand. So when we put in the code for microphone permission, we know exactly what we need to write and where the code goes. So let's start on the microphone permission. So here I'm going to have another group under the views, under the request authorization, going to create new group and call it microphone. Same way we created before, let's create new file, Cocoa Touch, UI view, request, microphone, authorization view. Click next, click create. Create a new file for the view as well. I have copy pasted the same name, click create. And like before, I'm going to zoom out a bit and select the view here, size. Sorry, we need to say size is freeform, and this time I'm going to give it size of 600. Same way, I'm going to open up the library as before, bring in an image view, have to have two labels, one for the title, one for the message, and a button like before. That is going to be called action button. Select the image view, go to the image and type in mic, select the mic, and we're going to give it a tint color of light gray color. Select the main title label, write in the code, the text, microphone, authorization, give it a font style of title 1, apply the horizontal and vertical center alignment, and select the image view, give it a width and height constraint of 60, as well as the lower constraint, the bottom constraint of 30, align it to the microphone authorization, and horizontally center align it. In the message, as before, we're going to write the same message. We require microphone authorization to provide you best experience. Okay, same thing like before, leading, trailing, 2020, top alignment to the title label 16, horizontally align center, make the number of lines 0 and the center alignment, and give it a font style of body. That's done for the message label. Select the action button, give it a width of 80, height of 50, and top alignment to the message label with a good space of 30, and as well as the horizontal center alignment. Going to give it a background color as this one, and the tint color white. Also, with the same way like before, I'm going to apply them labels by selecting the microphone image view and writing in microphone image view. This is the title label. Then we have message label, and we have the action button. So now we need to go to the microphone permissions view, and what we can do is we can copy paste the code for the camera authorization because it's exactly the same. So let's do that. Here, paste it, as well as the delegate. As well as the extension. Give it the same name as before. Microphone authorization tapped. Same delegate over here. Not the camera image view. microphone image view. Let's connect the IB outlets by going to the view, selecting the file owner first. We need to write in the name of the file, request microphone authorization view, head to the connections and expand the view. So first select the content view, which is here as the parent view, then title to the title, action button is over here, action button event, say touch up inside, so we don't forget that like before. It's very important, and message label, microphone image view as well, and also the width constraint for the action button, as this is exactly the same code as before. So go to the constraint, width constraint of the button, double click it, go to the connections, new reference outlet, connect it to the file owner and say action button width constraint. That's set up. Let's confirm back again in the file owner, everything is there, fine, perfect. Let's go to the request, hide this view and give ourselves some more space. And in the delegate function of the request, we need to call this over here, just update the code and remove everything that has to do with camera, replace it with microphone. Now what we could do is we could create ourselves generic view that handles all of this, but that will add a lot of complexity. For now, I will be covering that in a future video about generics also. As before, the private extension should not be on the camera now, should be on microphone. That's fine, fine. Here, the error state, we need to say microphone authorization was denied. So let's save that and add the same code in the launch view controller for the setup. So we need to have same variable for the request microphone authorization, and just update this part, microphone authorization, same way we did for the camera authorization status, update it for the microphone authorization status. But we need to have the controller, so for that let's go to the controllers. Under the request authorization, create a new group, microphone, create a new file, Swift, click next, request, microphone, authorization controller. And like before, I'm going to the camera and copy pasting this specific code in the microphone authorization controller and rename. So let's rename the part for the camera into microphone everywhere. Here I'm going to change it to microphone. Same way over here, microphone, microphone also over here. And the AV capture device request access, not for video this time, for audio rather. Same thing, the current authorization status should be for audio. And here also for the microphone. So let's head back to the launch view controller and update the code for the microphone. Microphone authorization controller, give me the current status of the microphone authorization status, call the same function. Now you'll understand that what is the value of having one function to handle everything. It's pretty easy to read, and having clean code is the foundation for good quality work. Same way, we will be doing copy of this code, microphone authorization. This time we are going to hold down the command key, click on the variable, click edit all in scope to have a mass rename and update all the code at once. Microphone authorization status, we should also have the microphone authorization view and check from microphone authorization status. Save it under the microphone authorization view, remove delegate. We need to implement our delegate also. Same, copy paste it, launch view controller, request microphone authorization view delegate, request microphone authorization tapped, microphone authorization controller, request microphone authorization, microphone here as well. Remove request for microphone authorization. Copy pasted here, request animate out the views, request camera microphone authorization, set this to nil and call the next authorization view request setup. Let's build the code. Yes, we forgot this part also. We need to load the microphone authorization status. And if the microphone authorization view was previously shown and the status was not granted, we need to remove the request microphone authorization view. We should update the sprint statement to have request photo library. Let's run the app again and see whether it works. Let's do a fresh start by deleting the app. Build and run the app. Camera authorization, click allow, say OK. We get ourselves microphone authorization button. We need to update the button. We forgot about that. Let's head back to the request microphone authorization, click on the button, expand the bar and go into the title and say allow. Let's shrink the bar back again, go back to the previous code, run the app. So now when I click allow, we are going to have a crash like before. That means we need to update the info.plist with the message like before for privacy microphone usage description. Microphone usage description. We will be writing ourselves the message, this app requires microphone. As stated last time, you should have a good message describing well information to the user. Why do you need microphone? This is just for the demo. I'm writing this short message, but you should rather have a good message. Let's head back to the app, run the app again. Click allow. Very good. Now we have the message falling through the request photo library authorization. Let's test out one more thing. I'm going to delete the app, run the app. For camera authorization, I click allow and say OK. But for the microphone authorization, I said don't allow. Now my microphone authorization is disabled. So this time when I should click on the link, I should open up settings. That's fine. And also when I stop and run the app, I should be under the denied microphone permission. state. This is what I was explaining before, that our application users could leave our application in any kind of state. So we should handle all the states. This is why having one function for every single thing helped us to reduce the amount of code, which was this one, sorry. Setup view for next authorization request. Now, one thing we could improve is on this one. If you look closely, the title has gone barely to the edge. That doesn't leave us a good visual aspect of the view. It doesn't have its own breathing space or a padding space. So let's fix that. Let's go back to the view file for that, the nib file, sorry. I stop the app, click on request microphone authorization, click on the title, open up the properties, and this time I'm going to remove the center alignment constraint. I'm going to give it a good space of leading and trailing 20 for both leading and trailing, as well as center alignment and the number of lines to 0, so it can auto grow. Now when I run the app under the same denied state, let's see how it looks. Very good. Our view now looks really good. So we have 20 over here and it's proper. So let's run the application one more time and leave it in a good state for the future tutorial. Let's delete the app. Run the application one more time. And for both of the authorizations, say allow, that means okay. Very good. Now in the next coming up tutorial, we will cover the photo library. So with this, we conclude the video for today. As you guys saw, this is the part 2 of the series, and we covered lots of ground to clean up the code for the launch view controller that is responsible for having the requests from the user. Stay tuned to the channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit like, and if you want me to cover any additional material, write it down in the comments. I will cover that material as well in future. And until then, bye bye guys. Thank you so much.